Ikim FM Inspirasi Utama Anda. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon to our dear listeners of Ikim FM. Welcome to a brand new episode of Seeking Sakinah. I'm your host Patricia Afrina. Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much for listening to us from wherever you are. Either you are listening to this through radio or even through our social media pages, Facebook and YouTube. As usual, I'd like to introduce the man of the show himself, Brother Edris Khamissa. Assalamualaikum, Brother Idris.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah, it's such a pleasure to have you back in the studio with us today, Brother Idris. And how are you, Brother Idris?
No, I'm very, very well, and I'm so
Mhm.
excited to engage with you and the listeners. And I know it's also going to be sad because this is the last few sessions here.
Yes.
And inshallah, when I do come back, I would like to connect with you because I'm thoroughly enjoying your particular presentation style, and we hope that the listeners are embracing it and it's transforming the homes, inshallah.
Yes, inshallah. And it is such a pleasure to have you enjoying this session here with us in Malaysia, Brother Idris. So, Brother Idris, for the past few episodes, we'll talk about finance, about relationship, the communication, especially. Now, here in this particular episode, we will talk about parenting as a team. So, this is something that I in my opinion, is also a big part in marriage. And as a starting of this conversation, I just like to share about my thoughts on about this parenting thing, because I've just got married, and of course, me and my husband, we do have the plan to have to become parents, to have babies. But then thinking about it, right, I'm actually quite scared to become a parent, because I'm worried that I might become I would say a bad parent to my children. So as a starting of this conversation, can you share with us the importance of parenting as a team?
You see, some people may not know this, that differing
Mm.
and divergent parenting styles often leads to divorce.
To divorce?
Yeah, when parents get frustrated with each other, if, for example, a father may be strict and the mother not so strict,
Mhm.
and children are able to manipulate these situations.
Ah.
So, what's important is this, that parenting is very, very critical.
Mhm.
Is you cannot discuss marriage without discussing parenting,
Mhm.
and that is a fundamental. And I argue that happy couples create happy homes,
Mhm. Agree.
and that is a fundamental thing.
Mhm.
But the question is that when each one of us have grown up from a particular home,
Mhm.
your parents might have had a particular parenting style
Mhm.
that might be different from your husband's,
Yes.
right? So the thing is, we're not saying that every aspect must be the same, but what is important, they need to support each other and look at common things that we do together and the same.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying this aspect, this is also very important. Should you disagree in front of your children? Yes, you can disagree without being disagreeable. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, what is important, you're showing your children a fundamental thing about marriage, that you and your wife do not have to agree on everything.
Mhm.
And if you disagree, it's okay, no issue.
Mm.
But what must not happen in terms of the specifics of parenting is where you undermine each other's decision.
Mhm.
For example, let us say um, the father comes home and he sees his son
Mhm.
about to leave,
Mhm.
and he says, "Where are you going?" With the bag. He says, "No, I'm going to spend the weekend with my friends."
Uh-huh.
And he says, "You are not going."
Okay.
And you ask the son, "Who asked you to go? Who gave?" He said, "Mommy gave me the permission."
Mm.
He says, "I'm saying you're not going." Now, you see what has happened there?
Yes.
In fact, what should happen is this. It should be done in a much more tactful basis. If the father has good reasons why he should not go,
Mm.
he says, okay, let me just talk to mommy, and they talk to each other,
Mm.
and then he says, okay, fine, go, my son, right,
Mm.
and do look after yourself, whatever it is. So I think what's
Mm.
important is this: the nothing must be unilateral.
Mm.
That parents need to continue to engage with each other.
Mm.
So when they are engaging with the children, they present a particular face,
Mm.
which is important. Now, the reason I say this is that if the father, for example, undermines the mother
Ah.
all the time, you'll find that children, when the father passes away, leaves this world,
Ah.
and for the mother to look after these young boys and girls is hell on earth.
Mm.
Because if the father did not give her any respect, did not accord to her any dignity,
Mm.
and I've seen it happen. They say, listen, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. So
Mm.
if the mother is given respect and dignity
Mm.
and support
Mm.
front of the children, if the father says, if mommy says you can do it, I'm happy with it.
I
You
see.
understand?
Mm.
Now, these things
Mm.
are very, very critical. And
Mm.
therefore, what mustn't happen is this. So, therefore, as a family, when you, with your children, you decide on a code of conduct,
Uh-huh.
some basic understanding about consequences of negative behavior and positive outcomes for
Mm.
positive behavior.
Mm.
So the mother mustn't say to the son or daughter, okay, you did this, wait for daddy to come. You see what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
What message are you giving?
To
What?
show that
Yeah,
the
she's
the
dependent on
father.
him,
Yes.
so she cannot make a decision regarding this.
Mm.
So these things are important. So I think, therefore, one of the things that I always recommend, even before marriage, is to discuss what will be the parenting styles.
Uh-huh.
You understand?
Yes,
Some of
yes.
them might be what they call a martinet, authoritarian.
Uh-huh, yes.
Others may be permissive. Now,
Mm-hmm.
for example, you might say, you know what? I grew up in a very tough home. My father was very, very hard with me. Me, I'm going to allow my children to do whatever they want. And
Mm.
what you are doing, you see, you are incubating a monster at home. So,
Mm.
therefore, studies have shown harsh, punitive parenting is as bad as complete laissez faire or permissive parenting, the
Oh. Mm.
extremes, you see. And that's very important.
So there should be the middle.
Yeah, yeah, there should be a
Adapt the
middle.
middle
Yes,
approach.
yes.
Mm. And talking about that, right? I think it is a not a uncommon situation to happen, because even in Malaysia, there is something that I believe that many household growing up point to, because if anything, the mother will say that, we need to ask the father first, and it shows that the mother doesn't have the authority of the house. And thinking about it, when I was reading about this, I was also I read somewhere that it said that whenever you see or know that your spouse give a decision on what to do to your children, you have to respect that decision. For example, like if the children do any kind of misconduct, for example, at the house. So if the your spouse say that, oh, give some sort of, like, for example, like, oh, you cannot go out in the evening because there's as a punishment for you to the misconduct that you did. So we cannot just go and interrupt. No, it's okay like that.
Mm.
Even though that you feel sympathy to the children, we have to respect the decision of your spouse. And thinking about that, the element of respect here plays a crucial role in parenting. So you also mentioned about the parenting styles, right? That you cannot adapt that both of the two extreme, because it is just as
Maybe
bad
you
as each
cannot.
other.
Yeah.
So you have to adapt the middle. Can
Mm.
you share in details about
Okay.
what type correct approach?
Okay. Now, but there are a few things. I want to respond to some things that you mentioned.
Mm.
A very critical aspect is this: that sometimes some person's response is leave him, is still a young boy.
Uh-huh.
Leave him. So
Yes.
you're giving a wrong message, right? You're
Yeah,
giving a wrong
exactly.
message.
Mm.
And the message you are giving to the child, you can do whatever you want,
Mm.
whenever you want, and there is not going to be a disciplinary
Yes.
measure.
Yes.
And there is a big difference between discipline and punishment.
Mm.
Discipline changes behavior, punishment suppresses behavior.
Uh-huh.
You got to understand that.
Mm.
So now, when I say a middle path, what do I mean? The middle path, I'm suggesting that you, when there is an issue,
Mm.
that you deal with the issue with a set of conduct and consequences.
Mm-hmm.
There is no need to shout and scream. But when the child realizes that if I were to do wrong, one of many things could happen.
Mm.
A privilege of mine could be withdrawn. Maybe I may not be allowed on a Saturday night to go out with my friends
Uh-huh.
for a month, all of those things.
Yes.
And you make sure you stick to it. But the
Mm-hmm.
same token, what's important, when your children are doing good things, they're doing right, acknowledge them.
Reward
In
them.
fact,
Mm.
psychologists have suggested that 85% of the time we tend to reprimand or chastise our children.
Uh-huh.
He says that must be the opposite.
Mm.
85% of your time must be when you acknowledge, applaud, praise, and encourage your children.
Mm.
You see, turn it around.
Uh-huh.
Otherwise, what happens? You see, one of the ironies, sometimes we forget this. Sometimes, when children, when children do wrong, they do it for one of six reasons. This is important.
6 reasons.
One of six reasons, right? So now remember, right? The one is they do it because they either got low self-esteem, they do it out of revenge,
Mm.
they do it because it makes them feel somewhat superior, they do it because it gives them some kind of immediacy, they do it because it gives them the attention seekers, and also they do it very, very importantly purely because there is some kind of rebellion. So now you got to understand, they say the ABC of behavior. The A is the antecedent.
Antecedent.
Yeah, B is the behavior,
Uh-huh.
and C is the consequences.
Ah.
For example,
Uh-huh.
say you and your husband sitting comfortably, then you hear some scream,
Mm-hmm.
but you have not seen the behavior, right?
Yeah.
You hear some scream. So now you need to identify what happened, how it happened, and why it happened,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
To understand that. So once you understand the motivation behind this thing, in that way you can deal with it holistically.
Mm-hmm. So you need to understand the reasons of why it
Yeah,
happened.
why it happened, you see.
Mm-hmm.
That's important.
I see.
Yeah. So, and I think the critical aspect of parenting is not only in terms of your relationship with the children.
Mm.
It's important that the father and mother, very, very importantly, must support each other
Mm-hmm.
in the presence of the kids or even in the absence of your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
For example, you need to say, mommy does this to you because she loves you. She cares for you. You understand?
Yes.
Now, what happens? Sometimes some children complain to, say, the mother, and the mother may have some marital issues with the father, who the children can see. And when they go to the mother might be aiding and abetting the children to have a similar point of view, right? She says, yeah, your daddy, I'm also fed up with your father. When you do that,
they're forming alliance.
yeah, they're forming an alliance. And
Mm-hmm.
and it can be very, very problematic, right? In fact, what you should do, you should protect each other, but you need to communicate it. He says, you know what? The kids are very concerned about you. They feel you're not doing enough. You understand.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So I think it's important. But the other aspect is that the part of parenting is to sharing responsibilities. For example, say that when the father comes home and he knows the mother has been looking after the kids the whole day. If she is not a working mother,
Mm.
then he says, you know what? Let me take over now. Let me do
Ah.
this.
Mhm.
So you need to discuss household chores,
Mhm.
to look at everything else. Or you say, you know what? I'll help Fatima with the homework. You help Muhammad with his homework. So
Mhm.
as a team, we are working together.
MashaAllah. And it shows the sense of shared responsibility in the
Yes.
family, and it showed that I can imagine that for the kids, they would think, when they see that kind of situation to happen, they know that they have a fair compassion and also love, affection from both of their parents. And in the earlier you talk about the difference between the discipline and the punishment, right? This is also some part of my worriness, that I'm scared that anything that I do, because as in the earlier of the season, you explained that before this, whenever you do something, it won't affect much of the people surround you, but now that you are married, anything, any words that you say, anything that you do will affect your spouse, either is in negative way or even in the positive way. So now that having children, of course, anything that you do will affect directly to your children. And you also, there's a difference between discipline and punishment. Can you explain to me, like, how do I know how to differ between these two?
Okay. Now, there are many differences, right?
Mm.
Firstly, punishment suppresses behavior.
Mm.
It creates an atmosphere of fear.
Uh-huh.
Now, if a child knows that if I do this, I'll get a hiding from my father,
Mm.
this will happen, whatnot. And when you ask your son, did you do this? It's unlikely he'll speak the truth, isn't it?
Yeah.
He'll try to escape that punishment.
Yes.
You understand? He will
Mm.
lie, right? So,
Mm.
in other words, what is happening, that his behavior is determined not so much intrinsically.
Mm-hmm.
It's not done out of love, it is done out of fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
The critical thing about discipline is, like, for example, a classic example in Islamic tradition.
Mm.
We are told to introduce Salah at the age of 7.
Yes.
Agreed?
Mm-hmm.
And if the child does not read Salah at the age of 10, you can beat the child.
Mm.
Now, our Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam never beat any child. Agreed? So,
Mm-hmm.
in other words, you got 3 years
Mm-hmm.
to develop in the child a love for it. Now, and you find psychologists have said by the time you are 10, your personalities are forming, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, the assumption is by the time the child is 10, he's no more reading Salah out of fear, but he's doing it intrinsically. He's also getting Sakina and
Allah.
comfort. You
MashaAllah.
see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
this is a very important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, also, what punishment does, it creates a lot of hostility.
Mm-hmm.
The children get scarred psychologically.
Scared of
It
even
stunts their growth,
I see.
right? They walk on eggshells at home, right? They are
Mm.
non-participatory at
Mm.
home. So this is what you don't want. But when you do discipline, it's done with dignity. Now, we're not saying you got to be overly indulgent. We're not saying you got to be lenient. We're not saying that you ignore any kind of negative behavior.
Mm.
But what you do, right? What you discuss with the family, the wife, you decide on, if these following things happen, if this happens, what are the consequences?
Ah.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is what you do. And you don't have to lay your hands on the child. There's no need to scream.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
Agreed. You know what I'm saying to you?
Yes.
Like, I remember I used to visit this one particular home, right? And the mother used to shout there,
Mm-hmm.
Muhammad, the food is ready. And he is in his room. He's not interested. Shouts 2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't come, right?
Mm.
Then she'll tell the father, your son, is no more her son. Your son, he's not responding to my calls. So I spoke to them.
Mm.
I said to them that should be your arrangement. You tell your son, when mommy calls you once, if you don't come, we'll continue eating. Then you
Mm.
can help yourself later. In that way, he knows these consequences.
Uh-huh.
Because If you are doing the same things every day and you're getting the same results,
Mm.
then you are foolish to continue. So you got to change the way you are doing
So
things.
approach the other way, try another way.
Yeah. And the other
Mm.
critical thing about parenting is this: often children complain that, you know what, uh, you'll favor Fatima. You're very soft with her. When it comes to me, you're hard with me.
Mm.
And so it's important that there's fairness in the treatment.
Mm.
There's importance for them to understand, when you talk to your children, if something upsets you about them, what is it that upsets you, right? At the same token, you must be continue to love your kids, hug them, be merciful towards them, so they feel a sense of love. And when they
Mm.
feel they are loved, they'll find it very difficult to do things that are wrong.
Mm-hmm. And also, interesting talking about that because I've read somewhere about it that sometimes being as a parent, right? It is not easy, obviously, because as for many of us, as all of us actually, when the first time become a parenting, we might have the tendency to do mistake in parentings, and once we know that our action hurt the feelings of our children, it is okay to say sorry, but unfortunately, there are parents out there who, no, I'm not saying they feel scared, but they feel um, that they couldn't express they're trying to seek apologize from their children because they think they have the authority of the family, so why would they ask for a apology from their children? And that is something that I think we can discuss about, especially for our listeners out there, to give them a better understanding that it is okay to say sorry to your children if you do mistake.
In fact, you know what? When you say sorry,
Mm.
you are teaching your children that none of us is perfect. We are fallible beings. The
Mm-hmm.
other critical thing that I would recommend is when you get your children, they must be free to have a conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
They must be free to disagree with you without being rude, and be
Mm-hmm.
good to ask them, mommy and daddy, we are trying our very best, but we want to ask you, when you become a mom and dad, what would you do differently?
Mm.
Right? What would you do differently? And when children understand the reasons, the rationale behind parents' actions,
Oh.
in that way, you know, they will begin to understand
Begin
that.
to,
And also, one of the things that I like to do is to do what I call role playing.
role play.
To ask the children, okay, fine, if you had a son like this, he did the same thing that you did,
Uh-huh.
what would you do? And once you do role
Ah.
playing, there's greater empathy and a greater understanding.
MashaAllah. And but then of course parenting is much easier said than done. And this is something that I observe personally from my friends who already have children, and they say that it is not easy to trying to be lenient to them, because they say that the more lenient we come to them, the more aggressive some become. So as children becoming, I would say, like disobedient or becoming more mischievous in their life, it is okay for us, the parent, to become aggressive a bit in the way how we discipline our children.
No, there is a difference, right? As I said, we're not saying you got to be lenient, but
Mm.
I'm also saying that you mustn't be so petty that every little thing they do, you want to discipline them. You
Uh-huh.
don't go to that extreme.
Okay.
But at the same
Mm.
token, I said there has to be a balance.
Mm.
When they do little acts of kindness, applaud them, tell them,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I like what you did. Give them a hug, affirm them, validate them, do those things,
Uh-huh.
right? And as we said, you say it again, that all children require the 6 A's.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be accepted,
Accepted,
they need to be affirmed,
affirm,
they need to be acknowledged,
acknowledge,
they need to be appreciated, they
appreciated,
need to be given affection, and they
affection,
need to be given attention,
attention. MashaAllah.
right?
This
And one more
six
thing I want
A's.
to add, one more A, for the benefit of the listeners, is to give children positive attributes.
Positive attribute.
For example, telling Fatima, we're so proud of you. I'm sure, inshallah, you're going to be a leader someday. So
MashaAllah.
that talk would lead to a child's positive self-talk. So I
Mm-hmm.
think what's important is this, that you do not create an atmosphere of fear. You create an atmosphere of a relaxed atmosphere
Uh-huh.
where children can participate, they can talk, they and have discussions. And so I'll give you one example, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this for me is very important. The example is what happened uh, one day. Uh, I had a father and I had his son.
Uh-huh.
The son was in the senior class,
Uh-huh.
and so the father was complaining, and he used to travel with his son about 30, 40 kilometers to come to the school.
40 kilometer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the father was complaining. What was his complaint? His complaint was that my son doesn't talk to me. Now,
Mm.
you won't believe what happened. This was such an eye opener.
Mm.
The son said, Daddy, do you recall that one day when we were coming, I spoke to you, I asked you a question. You said to me, keep quiet, I'm thinking, don't disturb me. He
Ah.
said that from that moment, I decided that I'm not going to speak.
Mm.
You see, so there's often a root cause.
Mm.
You got to find out the root cause,
I see.
because in the end, what is my prayer for this whole families is joy, happiness, that together they navigate turbulent waters.
Mm.
Together they help each other. That the children, when they do wrong, they must feel remorseful. When they hurt their parents' feelings, they seek forgiveness. When they, you know what I'm saying to you? We want
Yes.
to create a sanctuary. We want to
Mm.
create a haven for
Mm.
the children.
For them to be able to grow as a good person in the
Yeah.
future. And of course, parenting is very important in the early stages of the children's life. But then if they already, I would say that, uh I'm not saying grow old, but as they become mature, but then only the parents realize that, you know what, there's something wrong with the way how we parenting our children. Is it too late by the
It's not
time?
too late. Therefore, I would like to reinforce what I believe is an Islamic paradigm of parenting,
Mm-hmm.
that the first 7 years is a time of bonding.
The first 10 years.
7 years.
7 years.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And from 7 to 14 is a time of instruction, discipline, and learning.
Mm-hmm.
And after 14, you become the child's confidant. So
Mm-hmm.
if the basis is wrong, then you're going to have issues afterwards. So
Mm-hmm.
the foundation needs to be correct.
I see.
But it is never too late to rectify,
Mm-hmm.
because the prayers of parents are accepted by Allah.
Yes.
You got to continue to pray for them. Allah guides them, strengthens them.
Mm-hmm.
You can despise the child's action, but never despise the child.
MashaAllah. And as we are reaching the end of this conversation, I would like to go back into different types of parenting, because I believe that any marriage, any couples out there, they at one point in their life they will come across the point where they have different types of parenting, and of course, this based on the way how they were raised when they were young. So it same goes if I reflect back to my personal life. It also what happened to me and my spouse, because the way we being brought up by our parents are quite different, and now we are trying to have a discussion on how can we have I would say as a parenting style like we both agreed on how we want to raise our children. So just in as a closure, I'd just like to know what are some of the things that we can identify to know that we are actually doing a good job as a parent.
Okay, you spoke about different parenting styles.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the parenting styles is when there's autocratic parenting style.
Autocratic.
Autocratic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other way in the autocratic parenting style is when there's fear, uh, instilling fear
Yeah.
like a dictator, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you have what you call the teacher parenting style.
Teacher parenting.
It's a nice style where you engage with the children and whatnot. Some
Mm-hmm.
people call it a democratic parenting style.
Uh-huh.
Then you have a laissez-faire. The laissez-faire parenting style is when children are allowed to do whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
There are no rules,
Mm.
right? It's like a permissive parenting style, right? So now, what is important is this: the style of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam
Seriously.
was one that was, the basis was love.
Mm.
It was affection.
Mashallah.
There was an example when he was, I think, when he kissed his grandchild,
Mm.
a Bedouin said, "I've got 10 children. I've not kissed any one of them." So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said words to this effect: if Allah remove mercy from your heart, it is not my fault. The
Allah.
other version is, if you do not show mercy, Allah will not show you mercy. So that is
Mm.
a very important thing. And also, when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam corrected someone, he did with a lot of wisdom. There
Mm-hmm.
is a one example when one parent complained that that the son had the habit of throwing stones or whatever on the tree,
Mm-hmm.
and so Nabi Sallallahu asked him, "Why are you doing that?" He
Mm.
said, "Now I'm doing it because of the dates." He says, "Why didn't you pick up the dates from the ground?" You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying. So
Uh-huh.
I think these are important consideration. The answers are there in Islam, in our Islamic tradition, and I think it's important to understand our respective styles and
Mm.
to make sure that there's a degree of uniformity. Otherwise, you're going to confuse the children, and children in that environment, knowing full well that parents are at odds with each other, they can easily manipulate them.
Mm-hmm. I see. And again, it's like just a little bit about that. Actually, there's no is there any like what you say as the right way of parenting and the wrong way of parenting? Because we're looking at all these types of parenting.
Yeah. Now, the uh, I believe parents should follow what I call an eclectic approach.
Eclectic approach.
Yeah, there are times when something drastic happens,
Mm-hmm.
then you got to show that.
Uh-huh.
You got to show how upset you are.
Uh-huh.
You understand?
Yes.
There are times when good things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
You show that part of it,
Mm-hmm.
but you cannot be one sided and just get angry, upset, shout, and scream all the time, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that is unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think what is important is this: I know, and this is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Parents or children's behavior is often the reflection of the parents.
Mm-hmm.
When parents talk to each other with social etiquette, with love, understanding, children also learn that.
Mashallah. We have a lot more to share, but unfortunately, we are running out of time. And with that being said, I'd like to thank Brother Idris for his insight on to this conversation, parenting as a team. And we hope that today's sharing will be beneficial and also inspiring you, giving you a way on how you can become a good parent for your children. And again, Brother Idris, thank you for being with us in the studio. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.